Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to tonight's edition of Prime on My Media Prime TV, an edition that is going to be revisiting the history of Cameroon with one of Cameroon's finest in the domain, in the person of Professor Victor Julius Ngoh, who served as Dean of the Faculty of Arts, University of Boya, Registrar of same university, and Deputy Vice Chancellor of still the University of Boya, and then moved to the University of Bamenda, where he served, and later served as the President of the Catholic University Institute of the Diocese of Boya. We are going to be talking with him on our history and some burning issues touching on our national life. But we must also note that he is an author of so many history books, like one of which we have here is Cameroon from 1884 till date. This is a book that he wrote. We have the Abrogation of Federalism in Cameroon, that is in 1972. We have another book he wrote, The Untold Story of Cameroon's Reunification. So many history books that he has written. That is why from time to time I call him to refresh our minds on who we really are, where we are coming from, and why we are living the way we do. Good evening, Professor, coming all the way from Boya, Southwest Regional Capital. Good evening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kum. I'm very happy to be here, and I hope we'll be able to share the knowledge that we have as far as the history of Cameroon is concerned, and more particularly because of what we are expected to perform come October 2025.
Now, Cameroon is, the history of Cameroon is contested by so many persons. Why do we have the impression that we have different shades of our history?
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that most Cameroonians believe that the discipline of history is meant for anybody and for everybody. Mm-hmm. To the extent that they fail to understand that history deals with the past. And if you accept that, which of course it is, we have to rely on authentic evidence. Which also means that even if the evidence goes contrary to what we think, we should rely on it, especially if it is authentic. And the problem is also that most Cameroonians believe that they know the history. They don't know. History is not just telling stories. History is a science. And until you are schooled in it, you will not be able to effectively come out with the true history. And history deals with facts, not alternative facts. Facts are facts. You can have a different interpretation of the facts, but the facts remain the facts. And this is the problem with the history of Cameroon. Most Cameroonians who claim to be historians fail to understand that they know little or nothing as far as history is concerned. And when you want to tell them, of course, the tendency is that either you are bribed or you are working for a particular system, which of course, it is not true. And what makes me very uncomfortable is the fact that once you tell the story, tell the history the way it is, people get angry with you and call you names, whereas you are just saying what happened. What happened. It is different from saying that after 25 years or 50 years or 60 years, you say, well, it should have happened like this. It should have been done like this. But the fact is that it was not done the way you think it should have been done. That is history.
History is just telling the facts the way they obtained, whether they are pleasing to us or not, or whether this event went in our favor or not. But because of the ongoing, I'm sure, because of the ongoing crisis rocking the southwest and northwest regions, you people were charged with rewriting, compiling Cameroon's history. Where did this come from, and where are you with it?
Well, it's a very sad story, because when that committee was put in place, Cameroonians were very, very excited. Cameroonians were very happy, and Cameroonians really expected at last to have the true history. Unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, the political will is not there. The scientific committee, the chairperson is the Minister of Arts and Culture, and the two vice presidents, you had Professor Daniel Aboa, who is of late. He was buried last November. And the other vice president is my humble self. We did everything, came up with a work plan, with a program, with the volumes, the chapters, and we even assigned the chapters and the topics to various experts. We made a budget and submitted that budget with the program and everything to the chairperson or the president of the scientific committee. It's almost 2 years now. We've tried, before Professor Aboa died, we tried on more than 2 occasions to have a meeting with the minister, who is the president of the scientific committee, to discuss with him and find out what should be done next. Unfortunately, as of the 23rd of April 2025, we are yet to have that meeting. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm tempted to believe that the whole concept, the whole idea of writing the general history of Cameroon was to address a particular problem at a particular time. And once Cameroonians got excited, or at last the history will be written, the government developed a cold feet, and there's no political will. And we are where we are now. No history. But that doesn't mean that some of the books on Cameroon history are not good or are not correct. They are. What we wanted to do is to get everybody on board, and we all agree, based on authentic evidence, this is the history of Cameroon.
Now, this is it the ministry, or it's at the level higher than the ministry where things are being blocked?
You see, administratively, late Professor Daniel Aboa and myself, we have an immediate boss, the president of the scientific committee, and we've done everything, and we've submitted the files to him. And as I said earlier, we tried on 2 occasions to have a meeting with the minister to at least discuss that this is what we have proposed, the various volumes, the chapters, and the experts to work on the various topics. Unfortunately, we have not been able to. I'm sorry to say it, and it should be said, because tomorrow Cameroonians should not feel that some Cameroonians were given an important assignment and they failed to do it. So honestly, it is not the fault, it is not the problem of the members of the scientific committee. The problem and the fault lies with the authorities that be.
Okay, it lies with the authorities that be. Prof, before we get to some of your works so far, some persons actually think that, oh, Prof is on the payroll of the government of Cameroon. He is this person who is a regime person who is being teleguided to say and write what he writes.
That you have raised a very important point. I've been penalized, quote unquote, both by the government, by the regime, by some members of the opposition parties, and of recent even by the so-called Ambazonians. The problem is this: once the facts, the documents, the evidence points in favor of the government, I say it. Once the facts, the evidence point in favor of the opposition, I say it. So that's the problem. And as I always tell my students and my colleagues, academics, especially the discipline of history, is not meant for those who want cheap popularity. The discipline of history is meant for those who don't have sentiments as far as interpreting the evidence is concerned. You say what it is. It may not be popular, but once you are convinced, based on the available documents, that what you are saying is correct, say it. Even if you are among the tiny minority, you should say it. And that is the problem with some Cameroonians. I would just want to give you one or two examples. When some 40 years ago, I wrote that Amadou Ahidjo gave John Ngoh a copy of the draft federal constitution. I was castigated that it is a lie. I've been bribed. And to the extent that I was even accused of having distorted the history of Cameroon. And I remember very well in one instance an article by one of my former colleagues in the law department, University of Boya, wrote that Professor Ngoh is not talking history. Professor Ngoh is telling his story and not history. And even when the evidence came out that in actual fact, Foncha was given the draft constitution and did not present it at the Bamenda All-Party Constitutional Conference, Ngoh confirmed that, Bile confirmed that, Musa Yaya confirmed that, Esti Muna confirmed that, and the minutes, the confidential minutes which were eventually made public, confirmed that Foncha received the draft. And up to today, I'm sorry to say it, those who accuse me for telling lies have not had the academic honesty to say, Victor, you were right, we did not have the documents. You see, so in that instance, the story was what? Professor Ngoh has been brought over to run down a prominent Anglophone politicians. No, that was not it. And it got to a point to the extent that in one instance, I was even declared persona non grata in the Northwest. I must say it. But fortunately, more and more Cameroonians are coming around to understand and accept that Professor Ngoh says what he says based on authentic evidence. You may not like it, but that's what the evidence says. You see, when, for instance, Molan George Litumbe set the independence and reunification of Southern Cameroon and the Republic of Cameroon was not valid because a union treaty was not signed by Southern Cameroon. And even when I explain that the issue of union treaty involved members of the United Nations, Southern Cameroon was not a member. Of course, I was accused by some Anglophones that I was in the payroll of the a government. Fortunately, it is evidence now that Southern Cameroon, not being a member of the UN, could not have benefited from the Union Treaty. The Union Treaty was signed on behalf of Southern Cameroon by Her Majesty's government, because the United Kingdom was the administrator of the Southern Cameroon based on Article 76B of the UN Charter. You see, so these are things when most Cameroonians don't know the history.
But are you not well taken care of by the state of Cameroon?
Let me make one point clear.
Are you not working for the regime? Oh.
Of course not. Of course not. Of course not. On 15th of November 2015, a Friday, I was one of those reviewing the masterpiece of von Victor E. Mukete in Bamenda. 5 p.m. news, Victor Julius Ngoh was removed as a deputy vice chancellor. While we were doing the book launch, Dr. D was on the stage reviewing the book. After Dr. D, I went and reviewed the book. Before I went, my friends had sent me the text that Victor, you have been removed as a deputy vice chancellor. We were on the high table with the vice chancellor of UBA at the time, Professor Tafa. He quietly got his papers and walked away. I went and presented my book review, and during the reception, they were all shocked that I was aware that I had been removed, and yet I gave my paper as if there was nothing wrong. The following Monday, I went to class, and students were shocked, and I made it very clear, I never applied to be appointed. I applied to teach. And for the sake of clarity, that Friday during the reception, when von Victor E. Mukete was made to understand that, in spite of what some people would have felt depressed, I went and delivered my paper as if there was nothing wrong. Von Mukete gave me 250,000 francs cash. He said he had never seen somebody so composed who never cared. And I said, no, appointments, I don't care about appointments. And right up to now, I don't care about appointments. And so that is to tell you that I've never benefited from the regime because I have to support the regime. No. I work with the regime as a lecturer in the Ministry of Higher Education. My appointments were not based on any quid pro quo. So that should be made very, very clear. I've never benefited. The appointments took me by surprise. I never campaigned for it. I never asked anybody to campaign for it for me. So my appointments came thanks to God. And I was removed 2015 and went on retirement 2019. And
do you feel abandoned by the government? Because we've seen some persons who have served in state institutions like you have done, given appointments. Is it that you've not joined active politics with the CPDM, or maybe you've not attacked the government enough to attract Yaounde's attention to also appoint you?
No, you see, I am not interested. Let me give you one point. The text of the Ministry of there's a text in the Ministry of Higher Education which says that professors who go on retirement can apply to be taken, work for 2 years, renewable ones, which means a maximum of 4 years. You can ask anybody and everybody in Minisoup. I never applied. And some of the directors in the ministry were surprised. They called me, Victor, what is wrong? Everybody is applying. Why are you not applying? And I made it very clear. I am not applying. I'm not excited. And as God would have it, in June 2020, I sat in my house and I received a phone call from the bishop of the diocese of Boya, offering me the position of president of the Catholic University Institute of Boya. The bishop is alive. I never applied. So I don't get worried, because I know fully well that there's the African proverb that a good wine tapper needs no notice board, no advert.
Okay, no advert. I want us to look at the special status that we have for the Southwest and Northwest regions. You have written extensively on our history. I want you to try to relate what obtains today. We have the House of Chiefs and we have the Regional Assembly. How can you compare it with what obtains? We had the Southern Cameroon House of Chiefs and the Southern Cameroon House of Assembly.
That is a good point. Because I think Cameroonians need to understand how the government came about with the special status. And I was a member of the commission number 8, responsible for that. And during the discussions, the records are there, I raised the issue that the President of the Republic, President Paul Biya, convened the major national dialogue to address the high aspirations of the peoples of Northwest and Southwest regions. I made that very clear. And that the high aspirations of the peoples of Northwest and Southwest regions could be summarized in one sentence: the need for a return to a federal structure. Not a two-state federal structure, but a federal structure. And we were told in very clear terms that the form of the state should not be discussed. And in the process of our discussion, the issue of a special status came up, and we referred to the Constitution, article 62, I think so, which talks of a special status. And we were made to understand that what is important in solving the high aspirations of the peoples of Northwest and Southwest, it's not a matter of name. What is important in a bottle, it is not the name of the bottle, but the contents. So we all agreed that even if it is called a special status, if we give the special status the powers of a federal structure, would have still solved the high aspirations of the peoples of Northwest and Southwest without calling it a federal structure. And we resolved that a subcommittee will eventually be created to put in the ingredients of the special status. So that was it. And we accepted that on condition that the ingredients will reflect a federal structure. Unfortunately, some of us at the end just had an announcement that a special status had been given to the Northwest and Southwest. And I called some of the members. I called Barrister Agobala. I said, were you a member of the committee, the subcommittee that we proposed should be created? He told me he was not. So the bottom line is that who proposed those members who came up with the idea of a special status, because it did not reflect what we discussed and agreed in our commission. Coming back to your question, the current House of Chiefs and regional House of Assembly do not, I repeat, do not reflect the House of Chiefs and the House of Assembly in the days of former Southern Cameroon and in the days of former West Cameroon. Because I will ask you, who determines the running budget of the regional assembly? Who determines the running budget of the House of Chiefs? Of course, it is the central government. I must say it. But I would like to want to play around. It is the central government that finally says House of Chiefs Southwest, regional House of Assembly Southwest, your running budget is this amount. So what else? What else? Who appoints principals? It is not the regional House of Assembly. It's not. Who runs primary schools? And not the council. So to come and say the special status has addressed the problems, no. If in actual fact the special status addressed the problems, we would not have been where we are now, with the Amber still fighting. At least would have moved much further away from the senseless killings. So the long and short of it is that this special status has failed and has failed badly, and those
is it not being implemented progressively?
I feel so uncomfortable with that word progressively, given the very bad experience that Cameroonians have had with the 1996 Constitution with the word progressively. Progressively for how long? For how long? Well, we have been told that councils, municipalities are responsible for A, B, and C. Mr. Kum, go to Limbe, go to Boya, go to Douala, go to Yaoundé, go to Bafoussam. Look at the streets. Look at the rubbish piling. And you tell me that the councils have the means, have been given the means? The answer is no. Everything comes from Yaoundé. So to turn around and say that they were implemented progressively, for how long? Meanwhile, Cameroonians are dying. So to make it clear, it is time that Cameroonians and the powers that be recognize that there are serious shortcomings with this special status, and they have to go back to the drawing board.
You were part of the major national dialogue in Yaoundé.
Yes, I was.
Follow-up committees or sessions have been held severally to look at how far some of the resolutions have been implemented so far. Are you always part of it? And what is the net assessment you can make with regards to the resolutions that were arrived at?
You see, I always hesitate to personalize events in Cameroon. I'm not a part of the follow-up committee. From time to time, I hear over the TV that the follow-up committee met and sent out a positive report. And I asked a simple question. The major national dialogue met in 2019 and we're in 2025. That is almost 6 years after. Where are we? The major national dialogue was called, whether we want to accept it or not, the primary goal was to address the Anglophone crisis. And Mr. Kum, honestly speaking, are we still with the Anglophone crisis or not? The answer is the Anglophone crisis is still, the conflict is going on. Killings are going on. Kidnappings are going on. So for us to be told that everything
when every anniversary is an opportunity to reward loyalty, Orange is here to celebrate its 25th anniversary with all Cameroonians. Many prizes to win for the occasion, tourism trips, latest smartphones, and lots of other surprises. Quick, subscribe to Orange Bonus on #111*1# or via the Maxit app. Gather a max of points and try to win great prizes. Orange is here.
Page 63 of this book, The Untold Story of Cameroon's Reunification. So many persons are still not very clear with the process of the reunification. That is from 1955 to 1961. It started with, did it start with the plebiscite?
No, the 1955
to 1961.
1955, two major events took place in 1955.
Okay.
One was the creation of the Cameroon National Democratic Party, the KNDP, with the political platform of secession from Nigeria and ultimate reunification. I emphasize ultimate reunification. And the second major event was what? The UN visiting mission visited the territory in 1955. So between 1955 to 1961, there were three major political currents in the territory. Independence in association with Nigeria, independence by reunifying with the French Cameroon, and independence as a separate state. And where Cameroonians have been told many things that at times I ask myself if we are sincere. Dr. EML in Delhi and NNBLA of the KNC-KPP alliance wanted independence in association with Nigeria. John Ngoh Foncha Joa wanted independence by reunifying with French Cameroon. At one time, the fronts and chiefs, this is where Cameroonians get everything mixed up. At one time, the fronts and chiefs wanted Southern Cameroon to achieve independence as a separate state. And that's why Fon Achirimbi II, in 1956, it was not in 1959, at the Chiefs Conference in 1956, said we want neither water nor fire, which means we want neither independence in association with Nigeria or independence by reunifying with French Cameroon. They wanted independence as a separate state. We are talking of 1956. But between 1956 and 1959, that position by the Fronts and Chiefs themselves abandoned that position. I say this with two examples. in the London Constitutional Conference of 1957, von Gallagher II went to the conference as a member of the KNC-KPP alliance. And it should be recalled that the KNC-KPP alliance stood for independence in association with Nigeria, which means that von Gallagher II was in line with the political platform of the KNC-KPP alliance. John Ngoh led the KNDP party. And the KNDP party was what? Independence, secession from Nigeria, and ultimate reunification. When they got to London, von Gallagher II sent a telegram to von Achirimbi requesting him to gather all the fronts and chiefs to support the KNDP position, which in effect means that von Gallagher II abandoned the KNC-KPP position in favor of the KNDP position. To the extent that when the delegations returned to Southern Cameroon, Dr. EML in Delhi decided to replace von Gallagher II as far as the resumed London Constitutional Conference of 1958 was concerned, because von Gallagher II was no longer speaking the language of the KNC-KPP alliance. So the position of the Fronts and Chiefs, which they held in 1956, changed in 1957. Subsequently, at the plebiscite conference of monthly plebiscite conference of August 1958, when Achirimbi reminded the participants that the Fronts and Chiefs had said we want neither water nor fire. Most Cameroon historians think that that statement was made in 1958. Von Achirimbi II was merely referring or reminding the participants what the Fronts and Chiefs had said in 1956. And in that same 1958, there was the 4th UN visiting mission. And there was no request for independence as a separate state. This should be made very clear. There was no request for independence, no sustained request for independence as a separate state. And in addition, to tell you that independence as a separate state at that time was not popular, was not very popular, unlike what after 1972 and more especially after 1984, Anglophones are trying to give the impression that the most popular option was independence as a separate state. It should be pointed out that in February 1959, PM Kale founded the Cameroon United Party. And this was the first political party that came out strongly, forcefully, in favor of independence as a super state. Unfortunately, he had no support. This should be very clear. He had no support. So when Anglophones are saying that third option was the most popular, why is it that Kale, who was a political giant in Southern Cameroon politics in his own right, came out with his party for independence as a separate state? He did not have a reasonable following.
Okay. From what I get from you, how would you compare the chiefs? Because one would imagine that the chiefs at the time were so powerful compared with what we have today.
Definitely. The voters at the time more or less followed the directives of the chiefs and funds. the fronts and chiefs were powerful. And most often, they did not directly identify with a particular political party. They were not militants, card-carrying militants, unlike what we have nowadays. Because nowadays it's so sad. The fronts and chiefs, I'm sorry to say it, have reduced themselves to the extent that most of them, I've not said all, most of them, depend on their livelihood on the government. Can you imagine, just imagine in 1959 or 1960, that from Achilles the second will be kept waiting by an SDO. Impossible. I'm sorry to say it, impossible. Can you imagine that in 2025, the Southwest Chiefs will meet and declare for a particular candidate? And how do you expect their subjects who are not in favor of that particular candidate to feel at ease in the chiefdom? Especially when, as one prominent politician once said, politics is Njangi. Crash my back, I crash your back. So the Southwest Chiefs handed everything to the CPDM without getting something in return, without even getting the much talked about, much abandoned Limbe Deep Seaport. So that should tell you that, unfortunately, as far as I'm...
Maybe the support is going to trigger the fast tracking of the realization process of the Limbe Deep Seaport, amongst other projects.
For how long? For how long? For how long? You see, Mr. Kum, politics is not one that you just give away everything. You give away your joker. On the first meeting, you give everything away. How do you think? I said this now because as a member, a militant at one time of the Cameroon Democratic Union, at Damjoya and the CDU was very important, and still very, very important, in the noon. And the Sultan of the Bamum became a card-carrying member of the CPD. And that split the Bamum people into two antagonizing groups. And I think if you are following the history very well, Mr. Kum, there's a big division.
Yeah, very deep.
Very deep division.
Till date.
Till date. Based on what? Because the Sultan, with all the respect that the Bamums had and have for the Sultan, declared for a particular political party. And that's what we see nowadays. So it's unfortunate that the fronts and chiefs have openly taken sides in an environment of multi-party politics. The chiefs and fronts should have been advised, please stay clear. Even if deep down you support political party A, don't become a card-carrying member of that party, because not all your subjects will go along with your political views.
Okay. In the book written, The Untold Story of Cameroon's Reunification, The receipt part that talks about the organization conduct of the plebiscite. The plebiscite was organized by who?
And the plebiscite was organized by the UN. It was a UN organized plebiscite. And the two questions were: you want to achieve independence by joining Nigeria, or you want to achieve independence by joining the Republic of Cameroon? And as I've said it, the campaigns of the KNDP were well done, well oiled, and the KNDP was able to get most of the funds and chiefs. Most of the funds and chiefs. And of course, the KNDP had the financial support of President Amadou Ahidjo and of the reunification forces in the Republic of Cameroon. Reunification forces led by Paul Sopor Prizo. And although the KNC-KPP, which later on became the CPNC, had financial support from the Action Group, the financial support came very late and played little or no part in the campaign. So the position of the KNDP won and won heavily, and although Anglophones are still trying to see that was not the option. The third option was, what they wanted was independence as a separate state, and they tend to say the UN did not apply Article 76B. I would like to refresh the memory of Cameroonians and Anglophones especially. Article 76B called on the administrating authority to administer, in this instance, the people of Southern Cameroon towards self-government or independence, depending on the circumstances and the expressed wishes of the people. That's the complete. So most historians, Cameroon historians, just cite just part of Article 76B. Says and minister the people towards self-government or independence. Why did the UN come up with a plebiscite and or whatnot? The complete Article 76B says administer the people towards self-government or independence according to the circumstances and the express wishes of the people. And how do you get the express wishes of the people? By a plebiscite.
Okay. Now, by the plebiscite, the people voted not in favor of joining Nigeria, but in favor of, did the people still need some other mechanisms to authenticate, to credibilize this decision that was taken during the plebiscite?
You see, a plebiscite is a political mechanism. And in any democracy, sovereignty lies with the people. In this particular instance, when Southern Cameroons opted to achieve independence by joining the Republic of Cameroon, it became important how will sovereignty be transferred. And after long discussions, and here let me make one point very clear. Cameroon historians, especially Cameroonians, have given excessive weight to the Fumban Conference, rightly or wrongly, to the extent that most Cameroonians don't even know about the Yaoundé and tripartite talks of 2nd August to 7th August 1961. The Yaoundé tripartite talks, that meeting was very, very important, because it was at that meeting that the proposals from Fumban, because I've said it until at times I think I'm just wasting my time. No constitution came out from Fumban. I want to make that very clear. No constitution came out from Fumban. What came out from Fumban were constitutional proposals. And those proposals were put in a constitutional form at the Yaoundé tripartite talks. And it was at the Yaoundé tripartite talks that the delegations agreed. The delegations agreed that the plebiscite results and the rest after the April 21, 1961 UN Resolution 1608, at the Yaoundé tripartite talks, they agreed that an exchange of notes will solve the problem. And an exchange of notes was eventually made in September 1961. So that settled the question. And the UK, on behalf of Southern Cameroon, signed the Union Treaty, deposited a copy, because Southern Cameroon was not qualified, was not eligible to participate in the Union Treaty. The Union Treaty was reserved for UN members, and Southern Cameroon was not a member of the United Nations. So the plebiscite following UN Resolution 1608 and what came after, everything was settled through an exchange of notes. And in February 1962, the administering authority, that is the United Kingdom, wrote to the UN that it had terminated the assignment given to her. So that chapter was closed. So I was dumbfounded when in June 1995, the delegation of prominent Anglophone politicians went to the UN, claiming that they went there to have the decolonization file of former Southern Cameroon reopened, which was a scam. Which was a scam, and they came with a flag, and at the Ngoh bridge, they unfolded the flag, raised it up, telling Anglophones that this is evidence that the United Nations will revisit the Anglophone call for independence. And fortunately, and I give credit to late Barrister Ekotang, and I give credit to Dr. Simon Monzo, who were members of that delegation. Before Elat Ekotang died, he made it very clear that that flag was not given to them by the UN. The flag was bought in the UN shop.
But you are thanking them, and not me who caused that information to come.
Well,
it is on this platform that Dr. Simon Munzu actually said that that flag was bought, and to authenticate what he said, because I know that by Saikuntang Elat led that delegation, I moved over to his residence in Boya, and I told him that this is what Dr. Simon Munzu said. He said yes, and the flag is in his house. So I caused both of them too.
So that makes me feel fine, that at least there are some Cameroonians, some Anglophones, who have realized that Cameroonians should not be emotional when discussing the history of Cameroon. So thank you for getting Dr. Monzo and also later Elat Ekotang to affirm, to confirm that in actual fact the flag was not given by the UN. Because when I said it much earlier, before you interviewed them and they confirmed it, I was accused of distorting the history of Cameroon.
Now, you also anyway, the reunification actually goes on, but you've written about the abrogation of the federalism in Cameroon. How did it go? Ahidjo is accused of having unilaterally, in a very dictatorial manner, engaged in this process. Where did either anyway the House of Chiefs and the Southern Cameroon House of Assembly was no longer existing at the time these actions were taken? Oh, they were there. They observed this process through.
Yes,
were they helpless?
The House of Chiefs existed at the time. The House of Assembly existed at the time, and the Minister of Territorial Administration, Victor Ayisi Vodo. In his campaign for the abrogation of the federal structure, met and addressed the members of the West Cameroon House of Assembly and the members of the West Cameroon House of Chiefs, and saw the importance, the necessity of dismantling the federal system. They all accepted it. So for us, nowadays to say, oh, Ahidjo imposed that. I've heard people say Ahidjo was a dictator and therefore nobody could have opposed it. But again, Ahidjo, as politically clever as he was, the Constitution at the time, Article 2, said sovereignty lies with the people, the Cameroonian people. And this sovereignty could be exercised or shall be exercised either by the elected members of parliament or by a referendum. And we are talking of 1972. If the election had been done, if the motion had been tabled in the National House of Assembly, where it was an all-CNU house, Cameroonians and especially Anglophones would have said, well, the parliamentarians had no choice. It was a one-party system. Ahidjo opted for a referendum. And the vast majority of Cameroonians, both Anglophones and Francophones, overwhelmingly voted to abrogate the federal system. Be it those who campaigned from Professor Bernard Folong, Mr. Ngoh, Ekangaki, Estimona, Foncha, Mbile, Indeli, Elangwe, all of them campaigned for the abrogation of the federal system. Only a handful of UPC militants campaigned against it.
Yeah, but how do you explain that we say Ahidjo did it in a very dictatorial fashion, yet we have Anglophones who went campaigning for it to be abrogated? Were they not very comfortable with it? Because almost many persons will say, we were good as a federal structure. Our educational system was preserved, our legal system was preserved. But is it not shocking to see that it is Anglophones who went campaigning?
Bienvenue à la 10e édition de SARCA, le Salon africain de la relation client et des centres d'appel. Cette année, nous plongeons dans le thème Intelligence artificielle et expérience client. L'Afrique s'engage. Imaginez un futur où l'intelligence artificielle révolutionne le service client. Il y aura des expositions, conférences et formations. Rejoignez-nous pour célébrer cette évolution au SARCA du 23 au 25 avril 2025 à l'hôtel Aqua Palace Douala. Soyez acteurs du changement.
Pay your taxes and custom fees at Express Exchange. The solution is close to you. Enter an Express Exchange agency, head to the cash register with your tax notice, and make your payment of tax and custom fees with ease. Receive a confirmation receipt. So cool, Mula. Yes, Mula. From now on, I pay my taxes and custom fees at Express Exchange. It's simple. Express Exchange, partner of the Guilds and the Directorate General of Taxation. Express Exchange, #1 in quality service in Cameroon.
Of the federal system. His campaign and speeches are there. Genuine, authentic photographs of him campaigning are there. His audio recorded campaign speeches are there. So that is why I always insist that please base your facts, base your interpretation on authentic evidence. And that is what makes history.
Who campaigned where?
For instance, there were two campaign teams. One for the Southwest, and one for the Northwest. It so happened that all those for the Northwest campaign team were politicians from the Northwest. And those from the Southwest were politicians from South. And Joa was put in the Southwest team initially, but he refused and moved up to the Northwest team. So you had Joa, Muna, Francha, the principal one, campaigning in Junikom, in Bello, in Kumbu, in Bamenda, in Bengui. And the photographs are there. The recorded campaign speeches are there. While in the southern zone, you had Indeli, Mbile, Elangwe, and of course, the CDC and trade union campaign in support of it. The teachers wanted it because of the salary situation. So all of these Anglophones are complaining now. It is true that problems have emerged since 1972. But that doesn't mean that those Anglophones did not campaign for it.
Okay. Somebody is bringing us to this book, Cameroon, from 1884 to 2018. This is a book that actually compiles our history. The person says, "Good evening, Mr. Leo. I have some questions for Prof."
Yes, please.
He says, Cameroon is a name from Vuri, and Cameroon was annexed in 1884 in Douala by the Germans, and in Victoria by the British. Then he keeps on saying East Cameroon and West Cameroon. My question is here. Is he saying there was no name like Amber Bay, or he just wants to play over the West Cameroonians' minds?
That is a very good question. Mm-hmm. Before 1884, there was no territory called Cameroon comprising all the ethnic groups which we have now. Mm. The Ambas Bay, there was no territory called Ambazonia. There was the Ambas Bay, an area named in honor of St. Ambrose. St. Ambrose. And Victoria was a plot, a land or area bought by Alfred Secker and named it in honor of Queen Victoria, and named it Victoria. So there was no territory called Ambazonia. There was no area called Ambazonia. There was Ambas Bay, and Ambas Bay was given in honor of St. Ambrose. So for Cameroonians or Ambazonians to think that there was a territory, because I read somewhere somebody was saying that Victoria was also called Ambazonia. No. Victoria was not. And coming to East Cameroon and West Cameroon, it is essential to make it clear that before 1884, what obtained between 1884 and 1960 under the Germans. Before 1884, this notion of saying that Cameroon or Cameroon existed before 1884, it is not true. The various fundums, kingdoms, chiefdoms were quote-unquote sovereign independent chiefdoms. So there was no central power. The fund of Com, the fund of Nso, the fund of Bali, the fund of Bafud, the Sultan of Bamum, Kufa the Kenya of Boya, the fund of Banwa, they were all quote-unquote independent sovereign states. So there was nothing as Cameroon before 1884. It was between 1884 and 1916 that the Germans brought together through various means and established a central government and confirmed that initial name which was given to River Wuri in Cameroon. So during the First World War, which ended in Cameroon in 1916, not in 1918. In Cameroon, the First World War ended in 1916. The English and the French partitioned former German Cameroons into two parts.
So there was nothing like East and West at the time.
At the time, no.
Just German Cameroon.
The entire entirely. And in fact, Mr. Kum, you have given me the opportunity now to make a point. Under the Germans, from 1884 to 1916, there was nothing as Anglophone or Francophone. They were all German and Cameroon. And the German administrators, German missionaries, German businessmen, German plantation owners recruited workers from the Western grass field, the Bamda grass field, from the Betty land, the Bamneke land, to work under the plantations on the slopes of Mount Cameroon. So when in 1916, the English and the French divided the German Cameroon, those workers, the Bamnikes, the Betis, the Doualas, the Bassas, you name them, who found themselves in the English sector of former German Cameroon, most of them did not go back. So they grew up, got married, from time to time visited their original birthplace, while others completely cut off links with their ancestral home. And as the political evolution moved on, these former, we call them the Betis, the Bamnikis, the Ewundos, the Bassas, the Doualas, who grew up in British Cameroon. And some of them were joined by those who escaped the harsh French policies in French Cameroon. Now form what nowadays we call the Anglophones, who are regarded as neither Anglophones nor Francophones. And this has created a very bad picture as far as that group of Anglophones is concerned, to the extent that in Cameroon political life, some of these Anglophones, quote unquote, have been appointed to ministerial positions only for other Anglophones who claim to be genuine Anglophones to say X or Y is not an Anglophone. He or she is not representing Anglophones. So we have this problem now, which a good number of Anglophones are reluctant to say it openly, but privately they will tell you that, yes, it is true, Victor was born in Bota, but he is not one of us because his parents came from a Betty land. And so it makes it very, very, very difficult for the government to actually resolve the so-called Anglophone problem.
Okay. So the answer is that before then there was no. There was one German Cameroon.
Before 1916, there was one German Cameroon. Between 1884 to 1916, there was nothing as Anglophone Cameroon, Francophone Cameroon, East Cameroon, or West Cameroon. No, it was just German Cameroon.
Okay. The person is asking what is his effort to end the conflicts. And then he said, what was on the paper Ahijo presented to Frontier?
What Ahijo presented to Frontier in May 1961 was the draft constitution of the Federal Republic of Cameroon, which Ahijo presented to the delegation of Southern Cameroons and the delegation of the Republic of Cameroon in Fumban on the 17th of July 1961. So the delegates from Southern Cameroons, most of them were seeing that draft
for the first time.
Okay. And Ahijo was surprised to realize that they were saying it for the first time, because Dr. E.M.L. in Delhi made it very clear. The records are there. He says opening statement is there. Some of us are saying this for the first time.
Okay, there's another question. Good evening in the studio. Wish to be clarified by the Prof about the complexity of not conducting the plebiscite as one for both British Northern Southern Cameroons. One decision of the Milner Simon Agreement attached this territory to Nigeria. So was it logical for these territories to gain independence as one?
Initially, the politicians of British Northern Cameroons and the politicians of British Southern Cameroons work hand in hand. But in 1922, the British realized that a single administration of the British Cameroons would be very, very difficult for them, because the territory was disjointed. So it would be much easier for British, for the UK to administer British Northern Cameroons as part of the northern provinces of Nigeria, and later on part of the northern region of Nigeria, and Southern Cameroons as part of the southern provinces of Nigeria, and later the eastern region of Nigeria, for administrative purposes. And the League of Nations authorized the British to do that. So the standard of political development between British Northern Cameroon and British Southern Cameroon was very different, to the extent that British Southern Cameroon was politically more mature, politically more advanced than British Northern Cameroons. Therefore, since the underlying British policy, which we have not talked on much, was that British Cameroons, both North and South, should achieve independence by joining Nigeria. So the British subtle policy all along, from 1922 right up to 1960, was to ensure that British Cameroons, that is both Northern Cameroons and Southern Cameroons, should achieve independence as part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And doing the plebiscite separately, and more importantly, counting the votes separately, would ensure that British Northern Cameroons, at least British Northern Cameroons, should achieve independence by joining Nigeria. This was especially so because Ahmadu Ahijo was not really very excited with reunification. Initially, he was not. he wanted reunification to be with British Northern Cameroons for reasons we all know, the Muslim population and all that. If that was not possible, he wanted Southern Republic of Cameroon to join, to have both British Southern Cameroons and British Northern Cameroons. If these two options were not possible, reluctantly he will accept British Southern Cameroons, and that's what happened.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Koo. Please, I would like to ask Prof the meaning of this section of the Section 11 of the Southern Cameroon High Court Law, 1955. This law holds that the English law to be applicable in former West Cameroon, the common law, B, the doctrine of equity, C, the statute of general application which were in force in England on the 1st of January 1900 so far as they relate to any matter with respect to which the legislature, the House of Chiefs of the Southern Cameroon, is for the time being competent to make laws.
Well, I think I must confess I'm not a lawyer, and that is not my field of interest. But the federal structure and the Constitution of West Cameroon reaffirmed the British legal system, be it common law or whatever. The Constitution of West Cameroon affirmed it. So, and as I'm sure all of us are aware, one of the reasons of the crisis was the non-respect, non-application of the common law.
Okay.
As far as Northwest and Southwest.
Yeah. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Koum on the panelists. Please, let us know if the name Cameroon was given by the Germans or the Portuguese from the Browns. Thank you. Daddy Ambiance is writing from Tico.
No, that is simple. It is the Portuguese.
Okay.
Yeah, the German merely confirmed it and put it German Cameroon with a Kamerun.
So the name Cameroon actually was given by Rio dos.
Yes,
the Cameroons. Okay, I get. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Let Prof tell us if the one German Cameroon was an independent country or not. If it was not an independent country, why is there much talk now about one and indivisible Cameroon, making reference to the German Cameroon, which was not independent? Peter Mon is writing from Bamenda.
That is a straightforward question. German Cameroon was not independent, was not sovereign. German Cameroon was a colony. They normally refer to as a German protectorate. So that's a straightforward answer.
Okay. Please, I have a question for Prof. He stressed the existence of Ambas Bay and Victoria before 1884. How did Victoria later become Limbe? My other concern goes to you. Why can't you bring Prof. Ngoh and Fanso so that we can have three of them at once? I don't think. Okay. Actually, I've had several of these concerns raised. I've called Professor Fanso. I've spoken with him severally, pleading with him to come on the platform. He said he would come, but later on, it's been difficult for him to come. I've made those moves. As for Professor Ngoh, same, and he has promised to come on this panel. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the concern of the person who called is genuine. I would very much love to have members of the panel to include Prof. Fanso and Prof. Ngoh so that we can exchange information and have a healthy academic conversation as far as the history of Cameroon is concerned. It's a good move, and I would plead that you walk an extra mile to and to get all of us here, because I've received complaints, or not complaints, but I've heard statements. Oh, Professor Ngoh is saying this. When Professor Fanso will come, or Professor Zengwa will come, he will not say it. But whatever I say, I base it on authentic evidence.
Okay. I have severally have made those efforts, please. Now, we are talking about the history of Cameroon, 1972. What would have caused Anglophones to go campaigning for the abrogation of 1972?
You see, that the first reason, which some Anglophones don't want to admit, there was extreme hatred among the politicians in West Cameroon. They did not love themselves. They did everything to run down each and every one of them, to the extent that all of them, I repeat, all of them, looked up to Amadou Ahidjo as their savior. All of them looked up to Amadou Ahidjo as their savior. I will give you one example. In February 1972, Augustin Ngomjoa wrote a confidential letter to Amadou Ahidjo, pleading with Amadou Ahidjo to come and save him, come and protect him, or else he will be killed. So we mean that the first reason was the West Cameroon politicians wanted their political survival and even their physical survival. Secondly, the economic situation, the financial situation of West Cameroon was not the best. It was very bad. And this was aggravated by the fact that there was no constitutionally revenue formula inserted. It was not known. So the federal subvention, federal grant to West Cameroon came in a manner that was not consistent. Thirdly, of course, there was corruption. Be it CDC, Cameroon Bank, Powercam, Marketing Board, the West Cameroon Development Agency. And the financial situation got so bad that at one time, the Cameroon Bank, which was the bank of the West Cameroon government, could not pay civil servants their salaries. This should be made very clear. Could not pay civil servants their salaries. And Augustin Ngomjoa had to plead with Amadou Ahidjo to provide financial subvention to enable the West Cameroon government pay civil servants. And in one of Ahidjo's letters or replies to Augustin Ngomjoa, who was PM, he said, please keep your financial house in order. Keep your financial house in order. So with all this, and of course, the Nigerian Civil War from 1967 to 1970 was a factor that the Ahidjo government knew fully well, that there were some secessionist elements in West Cameroon who were prepared to exploit the Nigerian Civil War and get support from the breakaway eastern region of Nigeria. So it was in the interest of the Ahidjo and government to move swiftly with the abrogation of the federal system. And finally, of course, there was the discovery of oil. And this was made very clear in a confidential report, 1964, which says that the discovery of oil in the Victoria Bay, which enveloped the Indian era and whatnot, was such that would make West Cameroon as rich as Kuwait and will ensure full employment. So these are all factors which together prompted or led to the abrogation of the federal structure, especially when the East Cameroon or the French Cameroon politicians were very uncomfortable with the federal system, federal structure. And they regarded the federation only as a transitional measure which will ultimately lead to a unitary state. And that was what actually happened. So anybody who thinks that the abrogation of the federal system was a surprise, it was not. Right from 1961, the Ahidjo government was very, very uncomfortable with the federal system.
Okay. Then Limbe, how did Victoria move to Limbe?
It was this funny, I don't call it funny, that we should do away with European names, and we should adopt Cameroonian names. And you see a good number of those names were changed. For instance, Manfe to Manu, Kumba to Meme, and then Victoria to Limbe. But there's still a controversy over that. We have been told that Limbe is a Cameroonian name, a Bakwewe name. But another writing says Limbe is a deformation of a German word relating to the river that flows below the SDO's house in Limbe.
Okay. Some persons since we are talking about the abrogation of federalism, many persons are asking about whether there was a we or yes ballot, but you already explained that.
Yes,
so many other persons have said that.
I've explained that. The simple answer, there were two ballot papers. Yes. The white ballot paper had it in French and English. The question, do you want to abolish the name Federal Republic to United Republic? It was in French and English. And the answer we and yes was there. And the black ballot paper or the gray ballot paper had the same question with the answer no and no. So there were two ballot papers. And I always refer those who question the point to go to Augustin Ngomjoa's campaign speech in Bello, where he took the two ballot papers, and explained that one was light, sunshine, the other one was darkness, devil. The problem is this: were there enough gray ballot papers, the no and no? In some polling stations, there were not enough gray ballot papers.
Okay, for the no and the no.
Yeah.
Okay. You said there was great division amongst the politicians, the political class at the time.
A lot.
That also gave Ahidjo the upper hand to do what he pushed for, that is ultimate reunification, because by 1966, when he started merging all the parties under the CNU, he was already telling that he was going somewhere. But when you are a history teacher, everybody would say, okay, there was great rivalry between Froncha, Jua, Muna,
Indeli,
and the rest. have we learned our lessons? When you look at the politicians in those days from the southwest and northwest regions and what we have today, do you have the impression that, okay, things are better today?
Unfortunately, no. Because in those days, the politicians, be it CPNC, or K and NDP, in certain areas, they will campaign on the same field. One will be at the northern part of the field, the other campaign team in the southern part of the field. They will exchange, based on their platforms, exchange harsh words and whatnot. And in the evening, you find them in Boya Mountain Club, drinking and conversing. You would not believe that these are the same people who 3 hours earlier were exchanging harsh words. So the politics in those days was mature and responsible. Nowadays, it's so bad to the extent that it's a matter of do or die. You fall out with your friend because your friend is in the ruling party and you are in the opposition party. It's too bad. It's too bad. And then the situation has become so bad because Cameroonians have been made to believe or to realize or to suffer to the extent that they think they are very poor. And any money that is shown them, they rush after it and then change their views. So politics nowadays is not based on conviction. It's not based on ideology. It's based on what is my personal interest, not the interest of the community. What is my personal interest? And this brings me to what we are experiencing now. I say it and I will say it anywhere at any time. If these genuine opposition parties fail to present a single candidate, the opposition parties in Cameroon should forget about it. The CPDM will win. And I don't know if Cameroonians are smart enough to realize that there are so many so-called independent candidates coming up when all of us know fully well that they will not be able to get the 300 qualified signatures. And of course, the government, politics being what it is, the government will promote several political parties who at the end will either declare for the CPDM or we scatter the opposition votes to the extent that even if the CPDM has 35%, the CPDM will emerge the winner.
Okay. Mr. Liu, good evening. Please, I wish to inquire from Prof, why Augustine Ngoh was removed from the premiership of West Cameroon. It's a sensitive issue.
Some of the reasons. One, Augustine Ngoh was first and foremost a West Cameroonian. There were things that he did not accept. He grudgingly went along with. Secondly, even with Foncha and Muna, he was not getting on very well with them. And during the Nigerian Civil War, it was rumored that Augustine Ngoh was ready to use the mobile wing to secede. It was rumored. Thirdly, Augustine Ngoh was accused of wanting to form a political party. This he himself said it, that he has been accused of wanting to form a political party. And he said he wants to make it very clear that those who are saying it, they are liars. He's not going to form a political party, and he has never nursed the idea of forming another political party. So these reasons all led to his removal. What is interesting is that before his removal, the editor of Cameroon Times, Jerome Ngoh, had hinted him secretly that the upcoming secession in West Cameroon, Ahidjo was going to replace him. Joa phoned Foncha to cross-check, and Foncha said, "No, it is not true. You have my full confidence, and you have the president's full confidence." So it was a big shock when, in that day in 1968, in the West Cameroon House of Assembly, with WHO Efiom as a speaker, Joa was replaced as a prime minister. And it was so interesting. He had come in a well-sewn British suit, English suit, brown English suit, very confident that Ahidjo was going to reconfirm him. And at the end of this session, the Prime Minister's car, which had brought him, was taken away from him. He was stranded. And it was N.N. Bibile who carried him back to the house.
Was replaced by who?
By Estimona.
Okay. Good evening, please. I wish to ask Prof, if during the Fumban conference, was there a provision for secession if the agreed conditions for independence were no more going?
This is why I've told Cameroonians, please, we should not give excessive weight to the Fumban conference. No constitution came out from Fumban. The Article 47, the Cameroonians should get this very clear. The Article 47, which says that any revision, in summary form, please, any revision of this constitution which impairs the unity and territorial integrity of the federation is inadmissible. That article was not in the Fumban proposal. That article was inserted during the Yaoundé and tripartite talks. So Cameroonians should understand the importance of the Yaoundé tripartite talks. And it was at the Yaoundé tripartite talks that the Republic of Cameroon decided that the draft federal constitution, which will emerge from the Yaoundé tripartite talks, would be submitted to the National Assembly of the Republic of Cameroon for deliberation and adoption, which was done. Unfortunately, the West Cameroon House of Assembly and the West Cameroon House of Chiefs were not given that luxury to deliberate and adopt or reject the draft. And at the Fumban, at the Yaoundé tripartite talks, Augustin Ngomjua raised the issue that since the National Assembly of the Republic of Cameroon will deliberate on this draft constitution, it will also be necessary for the draft constitution to be deliberated and adopted by the West Cameroon House of Assembly, by the Southern Cameroon House of Assembly and the Southern Cameroon House of Chiefs. Unfortunately, Augustin Ngomjua's intervention was rejected. And surprisingly, Augustin Ngomjua did not get any support from any member of the Southern Cameroon's and delegation.
Now, when you say this Anglophone elites at the time actually campaigned for the abrogation of the federal structure that was existing at the time, when did they start complaining? Because when you follow, I don't know, you followed the resignation of John Ngoh, where he enumerates lots and lots of problems amongst all the Anglophone elites. When did they realize that, okay, what they campaigned for was a mistake?
You see, we have to be at times frank and hard.
Mm-hmm.
The West Cameroon politicians, to a certain extent, were naive. In October 1961, 20th of October 1961, Amadou Ahidjo signed a presidential decree creating a administrative zones of the Federal Republic of Cameroon, 6 of them. And West Cameroon was one administrative zone under an inspector of administration, Jean-Claude Ngoh. I don't have any connection with him. And Jean-Claude Ngoh was given excessive powers to the extent that the West Cameroon government complained because Foncha was vice president and at the same time prime minister of West Cameroon. But when Foncha was in West Cameroon, Ngoh had more powers over him because it was argued that Ngoh was the representative of the president. And when the West Cameroon government wrote officially complaining, he just dismissed their complaint. Whether that would have been an opportunity for them to hold firm and said, no, this is wrong. Also in 1964, Bernard Follon, acting on behalf of the KNDP, wrote a confidential letter of complaint to Amadou Ahidjo that all what they had agreed, the KNDP was not being treated as an equal partner. That was in 1964. Confidential letter. There again, Ahidjo ignored it. Those were signs that they should have stood firm and taken a stand. But the unfortunate thing also is that there were instances where Ahidjo and Foncha were in discourse and they were agree, and when Ahidjo implements it and it backfired in West Cameroon, Foncha will claim ignorance, that he had no idea, that he was not consulted. A clear example was the issue of the police when Ahidjo decided to bring in gendarme and in West Cameroon and all that. He had discussed that with Foncha, and when he signed a decree, and the West Cameroon police officers and superintendent of police and the rest met Foncha and castigated the decree. Foncha wrote to Ahidjo, the letters are there in the archives. Foncha wrote to Ahidjo complaining, and Ahidjo replied to Foncha, do you recall that on this day we discussed this, and you agreed on this? So I'm surprised that now you are saying that you had no idea. So those are some of the problems.
Okay, but even after what you are saying, 1964, Bernard Follon complained.
Yeah.
And then they still agreed to merge their parties in 1966. How do we explain this?
No, you this is what I've said clearly. The political disunity, the political hatred of the West Cameroon politicians at the time. Because they all believed that they will survive politically if they came under one political party. And you see the rapidity with which the West Cameroon political parties dissolved to have a one party state. They all believed that without having a one party situation, their own political future will not survive.
Okay. Good evening to you and Professor Ngoh. Why was Mr. Joa kept under house arrest in Bamenda, and why was Abendon killed at Kola in Konsamba?
The Abendon story is very, very interesting. When Professor Gottlieb Monikoso was alive, because he was the director of the Ibadan hospital when Abendon was killed. And Abendon's corpse was flown to the Ibadan hospital for an autopsy and all not. Because the official reason for his death was not that he was murdered or assassinated. They gave a medical term that related to his heart or liver. And the members of parliament in West Cameroon, if you read the minutes of the West Cameroon House of Assembly session dealing with the death of Abendon, you would realize that the MPs were all shocked and surprised that they never knew Abendon had a heart problem or whatever it is. So, since the government, the West Cameroon government said he was very sick, suddenly is ill, and then he was flown to Ibadan. And Professor Gottlieb Monikoso was the director of the hospital at the time. And I asked him the question. If Abendon was killed, and if his corpse was brought just for some funny confirmation, and honestly speaking, I wish he was still alive. He told me, Prof, for medical ethics or medical reason, I would not want to discuss that topic. That was what he told me. So that's that. But the point is that Abendon was killed. They did not really want to kill him. It just happened that he was at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Why was Joa under house arrest?
You see, as I said, at one time, the enemies of Joa made it known that Joa was about to form a political party. And not only forming a political party, Joa was also arranging to get arms. Mm-hmm. So, of course, the government had to act.
Okay. The government had to put him out. As we speak, what is your appreciation of the Anglophone crisis? Because in this book you say Cameroon from 1884 to 2018, and you try to describe the Anglophone crisis. In it, what, according to you, went wrong for us to be in this crisis today?
Honestly, speaking, the government misjudged the gravity and the seriousness of the crisis. I hate to say it, but it should be said. The government thought at one time that it could use money to solve the crisis. And money was actually given to the leaders of the crisis, to some of the leaders. Some of them took the money and still carried on with the strike. On the other hand, the leaders of the strike, the teachers union and the lawyers union in Cameroon, allowed themselves to be dictated by some Cameroonians in the diaspora. And that was why the number of grievances, which, for instance, the teachers presented, kept on changing from 11 to 15 to 18 to 20, whatever it is. So it became difficult to hold the teachers accountable, since they kept on shifting their position. And finally, the hidden intention of the ring leaders of the teachers union and the lawyers, some of them, finally came out when they were no longer talking of corporate grievances, but of political grievances. Revisit the form of the state. That now became a different ball game, and the government took the position that the form of the state could not and will not be revisited. But I think the government tried. The major national dialogue was an opportunity for all the parties to sit together and talk. But it should be stated very clearly that the invitations which the government gave, the invitations were also extended to members, the frontline leaders of the Ambazonian cause. And all of them, most of them refused to attend. Some gave reasons that they were not sure of their security and whatnot. But the fact is that the government sent out invitations to them. And some of them initially accepted to come, but at the end did not come. But I think that the government should get back to the drawing boards, the drawing board, and come out with an inclusive dialogue. But the catch-22 is this: who will represent the Ambazonians? Who? Because right now, most of the Ambazonian frontline leaders in the diaspora have no control over the so-called so many generals on the ground. The Amba fighters have tested quick money. They kidnap you in no time. They raise 5 million francs, 10 million francs, 2 million francs. So they don't see any need of just easily and giving up. You will recall, Mr. Kum, that some weeks back, one of the Amba generals in Jersey was killed, and it was discovered that he had millions with him, and he was putting up a fantastic structure. So you ask yourself, what was he ending before the outbreak of the crisis? So that should tell you how difficult it is to end it. But the government's policy of getting those who have accepted to lay down their arms to the DDR center is the best approach, and the government should continue. But the government should not give the impression that, quote unquote, everything is under control, for it is not under control.
Okay. Yes. We are moving towards elections. October this year, we're going to have elections. You have had, also you've written about elections in this country for all these years. What is peculiar with what will happen this year?
The peculiar point is that the opposition party is very, very disunited. Mm-hmm. Very, very. So far, they have spent most of their energy insulting one another, fighting one another, while the CPDM definitely sits and laughs at them. And if Cameroonians don't put enough pressure on the opposition parties to put aside their selfish grievances, selfish interests, and work in the interests of the common man, Cameroonians will get up in October and realize that Mr. Paul Biya has been re-elected president of the Republic of Cameroon. I think let me make a difference, which is important. I think a good number of Cameroonians who are against the candidate of Paul Biya is essentially because they believe that after 42 years, we have the water crisis, electricity crisis, poor health facilities, very poor road network, excessive corruption. What next can President Paul Biya offer in the next 7 years? And I think most Cameroonians are not against the CPDM putting up a candidate, but are against the CPDM putting up Paul Biya as a candidate, because take the balance sheet after for the
that's the question I was going to end this program with you, for you to, if one were to ask you to present a balance sheet of the current government, the regime, what would be the answer?
After 42 years, with the enormous natural resources of the country, enormous human resources of the country, I can only say the pointer moves negatively. And it is so sad, because look at it everywhere, all aspects. The government officials, some of them acknowledge that. The last time the Delegate General of National Security lamented the road structure from Yaoundé to Buea, and it is everywhere, not only Yaoundé to Buea. Go to the east, go to the ground, went to the far north, and he was embarrassed. People are suffering. How do you explain that in the 21st century, some pupils in certain parts in the ground north, primary school children are still attending classes in ramshackle buildings, leaves. It is a shame. It is unacceptable. In Buea, you cannot have 1 full week without electricity cuts. Almost every day. No. So you explain that how? The cities are dirty. Even what unites Cameroonians, football, is in a mess. So I think, honestly and speaking, after 42 years, what will you say when the corruption has become the norm? Talk of a COVID gate. What has become of the COVID-19 embezzlement? The Olembe Stadium, the Yaoundé Douala Road has just been eating billions. For how long? For how long? So you see, they always explain that the BR government has built many schools, 11 state universities, many hospitals. But honestly speaking, some of those schools, be they primary schools or secondary schools, the government creates them on paper, and the members of the various communities contribute towards the...
What is the problem fundamentally? Is it the president who is not doing his job, or the ministers and directors who are not implementing?
I think we should look at President Paul Biya with the lens of 1982 to about 1997, and President Paul Biya from 2018 to now. That two very different people. And we should be honest. We are all human beings. As we grow older, our faculties become weaker and weaker. And you see the excessive control of the system by the military is partly responsible. I don't know if you have taken the salary scale of the military and put that salary scale alongside the scale of civilians, you'll be shocked. You'll be shocked. So it is in the interest of the military to ensure that the system is maintained. But at the end of the day, sovereignty lies with the people. And the best way of ensuring that you have the government that you want is for Cameroonians to go to the polls come October 2025.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Victor Julius Ngoh, for accepting to be part of tonight's edition of the program. Just to remind our televiewers that you once served as the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, University of Buea. You also served as Registrar of the University of Buea, as well as Deputy Vice Chancellor of that same university. You've served as Deputy Vice Chancellor at the University of Bamenda, and also as President of the Catholic University Institute of the Diocese of Buea. You are author of so many history publications, books, so many of them. We have here Cameroon from 1884 to present. We have the abrogation of the federal system. That is in 1972. Here we have the untold story of Cameroon's reunification. During the launch, before the launch of this book, I had the honor to host you while I still worked at ITV at Hotel Carlos in Muya. I will never forget that day. And a host of other publications that are found in some of the libraries across Cameroon. We want to thank you for accepting to come and refresh your minds on our history this evening.
Thank you very much for having given me this opportunity. And as I say, I'm always willing and ready to share the little knowledge I have as far as Cameroon history is concerned, especially given this very difficult period that Cameroonians are going through. And I would like to take this opportunity to also say that when Cameroonians, especially Anglophones, are talking of the independence of Southern Cameroon, which was not popular at the time, they should look at what they're thinking in the 1950s and right up to 1961, and what they are thinking now. There are two different things, and I just came out with a book on the third option, which explains why the third option could not, the third option was not accepted in the plebiscite of 1961, why it was not one of the plebiscite questions.
Okay, we thank you for coming, and also to the producers of the program, Eli and Desmond. And once again, I will remind that I've spoken with Professor Fanto. I called him not once, not twice. I've spoken with him, inviting him to also come and tell us the history he knows of this country. And also Professor Ngoh, we've spoken severally, but at least for him, he has promised that he's going to be coming to talk about our history on this platform. But if you think that you have something to offer, not only in history, but that you can actually educate Cameroonians on different fields, politics and economics, amongst others, social, cultural, get to me and I will gladly host you here as a panelist to also help educate Cameroonians. We thank you all for watching. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.